This tiny little nation is home to the world's top tech companies. Google, Meta, Amazon, and every major US firm you can think of has got a headquarter here. And you might be wondering what really made this country so attractive that even TikTok is building a massive headquarter in Dublin. There are other top locations in Europe, so why would these giant businesses choose such a small country? Why all this rush? Apple pioneered this technique, which became known as the double Irish with the Dutch sandwich. But it was far from the only company to benefit. Google, Microsoft, and Facebook did the same thing. During the 1990s and early 2000s, American multinational corporations increased their international earnings, with billions of dollars flowing to Ireland. And while most people suspect some amount of tax evasion, the amazing scale of this operation went mostly unnoticed for years. Independent researchers and scholars such as Emma Clancy, Brian O'Boyle, and Kieran Allen have contributed significantly to our understanding of the subject matter. Then, in 2013, once the public became aware, the US Senate held high-profile hearings, which were attended by Tim Cook. With the world's attention focused on Ireland, the country pretended innocence. Apple had merely used a loophole, never mind that it had purposefully written its tax code to achieve these objectives. Now, it should be evident that Ireland is a tax haven. Is its economic success real? Remember that Ireland is one of the world's richest countries with a per capita GDP of more than $100,000, and its economy expanded by 25% in 2015 alone. Critics of its tax system contend that all of this is a statistical fantasy, and that the country is little more than a Bermuda, Bahamas, or British Virgin Islands with castles. Consider what happened in 2015. Irish workers didn't suddenly become 25% more productive, nor did Irish businesses export 25% more goods. No, what actually happened was that when Ireland closed the double Irish loophole, it created a new one. Beginning in 2015, businesses could deduct the whole cost of any intellectual property purchase from their tax bill. So what did the firms do? They bought a large amount of IP from themselves, of course. Companies like Apple transferred an estimated $270 billion in trademarks and patents to their Irish companies. On paper, trademarks are no different than oil or refrigerators. Hence, Ireland's GDP increased by 25%. This is what skeptics mean when they say its economy isn't real. Worse, they say that while the benefits aren't genuine, the expenses are. The dominance of foreign multinationals in small Ireland had led to a housing crisis that makes America's look mild in contrast. According to the study, property prices in Dublin soared by 429% between 1991 and 2007. Second, the Irish economy is heavily reliant on a very small number of American corporations. Just 10 companies account for 60% of the country's corporate tax receipts. The top 3 pay roughly 1/3 of the total. From the recent boom to the busts of the Great Recession and the dot-com bubble, the Irish economy is completely dependent on Washington. In 2021, Ireland was forced to join an OECD agreement that establishes a 15% global corporate tax rate and reallocates profits to the country where the sale really occurred. If history is any indication, Ireland will simply create a new loophole. However, there is still a possibility that it will be compelled to modify its practices and lose this money in the future. And not simply revenue. As proponents of Ireland's tax policy remind out, one of the implicit agreements reached over 40 years ago between Apple and Ireland was that the former supply high-quality, well-paying jobs. Following the end of World War II, the United States saw a baby boom. 20 years later, these millions of young adults entered the labor force, resulting in a continuous 40-year increase in employment. Ireland's baby boom, on the other hand, was around 30 years later and significantly more constricted. As you can see, it gained millions of young, working-age people in the 1990s. Apple and its competitors have put thousands of these 20 and 30 years to work. Today, foreign corporations employ up to 10% of the Irish workforce, with nearly all of them being American and working in technology. Apple's 2020 press release touting its Irish community was not a complete lie. The company does employ more than just accountants. Even if cheap taxes attracted multinational corporations in the first place, this argument contends that they have stayed because of substantial operational advantages. Indeed, Ireland is presently the only English-speaking country in the European Union. It's only 6 hours from New York, and its population is highly educated. Sure, Ireland is a tax haven, as they may confess, but its economic success is real. However, both those who claim that Ireland's economy is real and those who say that it's fake miss the point that real and fake are not mutually exclusive. In reality, these two aspects of its economy are complementary. Take, for example, what happened in 2013. Shortly following the spectacular US-following Senate hearings, the European Union initiated an investigation into Apple's tax practices. In 2016, it determined that Ireland had given it special treatment. In a verdict that has since been overturned and is now subject to a second appeal, the court ordered Apple to pay Ireland $14 billion in unpaid taxes. So how did Ireland react to their $14 billion windfall? With fury. To the surprise of many Irish citizens, the government filed an immediate challenge to this verdict. You may be thinking, of course, better to turn down a small sum of money today to preserve the larger flow tomorrow. However, this was not a small sum of money. Remember, Ireland has a population of only 5 million. $14 billion would have covered the country's entire annual health budget, or 7 years of transport. Let us not forget that reduced corporation tax rates are simply another way of attaining the same goal. The Irish government, like every other government, is in the business of collecting more taxes. So why turn down so much money? Especially since, in the view of Apple, Ireland's hands were clean. The EU initiated the court action. Because Ireland is more than a simple tax shelter. After all, there are safer, less expensive, and more discreet places to deposit your profits. It is not even the lowest tax jurisdiction in Europe. Apple could undoubtedly find a more accommodating administration in a smaller, less democratic Caribbean island. What Ireland truly sells that the Caribbean cannot provide is its unblemished reputation. Yes, the Cayman Islands have extremely cheap taxes, but without the connotation of the Cayman Islands. Here's how it works. First, Ireland's real economy, in which real people go to work every day to fix pipes, connect servers, and sell computers, gives the illusion of legitimacy. And then companies set up shop in Ireland because of the country's favourable 12.5% tax rate, which allows trillion-dollar corporations to pay billions of dollars less in taxes. According to one analysis, Apple used Ireland to cut certain of its sales and operational costs by only 0.005%. Apple is the largest firm in Ireland. It has used Ireland to save significantly on taxes since the early 1990s. It employs thousands of people here and is one of the major corporate taxpayers in Ireland. Apple transfers its profits to subsidiaries in Ireland. Therefore, gains are frequently taxed at Ireland's rate rather than the country where the goods were purchased. However, keep in mind that what Apple is doing here is completely legal. In fact, you might argue that it is even encouraged, because as a publicly traded corporation, its aim is to maximize shareholder profits. On a more positive note, since Brexit, Ireland has taken advantage of new chances to provide a more pragmatic alternative to the UK's harsh Brexit. In contrast, the United Kingdom is still recovering from the triple shock of austerity, low productivity, low investment, and the Brexit vote. Ireland has numerous challenges, and GDP statistics do not reflect living conditions, but it is now growing faster than the UK economy. The UK economy is searching in vain for a new spark to reverse years of bad performance. Thousands of Irish travel to England and America in quest of higher earnings. But now, it is Ireland that is attracting net migration, with people seeking a thriving economy.